Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Half-Life podcast. Yes, indeed, I decided to bring this one back, and that's because I was looking at some of the past videos there in this series, and I saw it looks like YouTube has finally had some common sense knocked into them. Most of my videos have now been monetized, whereas before they were not. And then I saw that there were a good number of views associated with them too, plus several of you, I've still seen messages to this day, have asked me to talk about these videos again. So, with that trifecta of things, I decided let's give it a chance and see what happens afterward. So I'm going to test these videos again, see what YouTube does. Are they going to go ahead and monetize them? We'll see. Are they going to go the other route? We shall see too, but fingers crossed, hopefully I'll be able to start talking about these videos on a continuous basis. And with regards to this video specifically, it's a monster that you're looking at here that's encountered within multiple games. For the sake of this video though, normally I would talk about it just in the first game only, but because there's such little info associated with it, I thought I would go ahead and include all the rest of the games. Very rare that I do that for the Half-Life podcast, but it's just necessity in this case. And it's known as the Leech. Definitely a monster that you and I have encountered throughout multiple parts of multiple games in the Half-Life series. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the interesting info associated with this Leech and the ramifications of it, because when I was looking at the info on a larger basis, I realized absolutely this is actually one of the most dangerous creatures in the entire planet. So what was this Leech? For starters, I know that's the name associated with it. I don't know though if that's the true name, like in terms of its scientific name in the game itself. You know how Half-Life has a lot of names that are just tied to it on a, I think the word is called like colloquial basis, like it's more like a common name rather than, let's say, its true scientific name. But it's also known as the Carnivorous Leech. It's a creature that's encountered within certain parts of the first game, and they extend to some of the expansion games, like some of the others like Opposing Force, and then of course going into Half-Life 2. I think they're also even in Blue Shift. I can't remember exactly if they are, but definitely they were in Opposing Force. They're a creature that is found again in those parts of the games, very specifically at points where you have to confront them, or they're there to prevent you from going to other places. So almost like a brick wall of sorts that you run into, and you have to get around them. You can't just basically run straight into them. First, let's talk about their characteristics associated with this Leech. Well, I mean, you're looking at it now. I mean, it's pretty common. It's pretty simple to describe. It's basically like a giant worm. It's based off, if Half-Life was doing things still as they do with some of their monsters on an Earth-like animal basis. It's mostly based off the European medicinal leech. And that's because of the fact that both of these creatures essentially suck on certain parts of animals or certain parts of humans as their nutrition. So these things, they look like your average leech. They're probably about maybe about a foot long or so at most. In some cases, I didn't see much differentiation in terms of them being longer or shorter. They seem to have just the same anonymous look to them, a gray-like body, maybe sometimes even white in some cases, and they have these stripes to them too. Maybe that's part of their coloration, or maybe it's supposed to signify some form of shadowing. Either way though, it could be a form of camouflage as well, much like snakes, serpents, other types of animals like cheetahs. They have these specific spots to them. These things may just have that differentiation with them too. The number of eyes with them is also somewhat disputed. Some of them apparently have 2 eyes, others have 6. I guess it just depends on the leech that's encountered or wherever they're encountered too. But more importantly, with regards to the characteristics, the reason known that they're known as the leech is because they latch on to people. In this case, of course, main person that you're playing, Mr. Gordon Freeman, they latch on to him and they start sucking his life. Like they start doing something. The game never really implies like what. You just hear a munch. That's all it is. It's a very, very distinct noise, like almost like somebody's chewing on an apple. And when that happens, you see your life slowly draining away. So whether they're actually sucking on the blood or taking out parts of you, like little teeny tiny parts at a time, It's difficult to describe, but that's essentially why they're known as the leech or the carnivorous leech, because of that factor. And then where they're found, again, various parts of the game, especially the first one. If you go there, they're found in the Black Mesa Research Facility, known as the Biodome Complex. It's a place where it's primarily, or some parts of it, underwater. And in those specific spots, that's where you'll see some of the leeches held in an aquarium, because apparently they were transported early on by the scientists there in Half-Life. Like before the Renaissance cascade happened, they were transported beforehand and studied, much like some of the other animals there from Zen. That's their original homeworld, by the way. They came from the place known as Zen. But there they were being studied in an aquarium, trying to find out exactly their nature. And then, of course, when the whole thing happened with the Renaissance cascade, that's when they were in turn transported to multiple parts of the Earth. In fact, here's where I was saying earlier how they may be known as the most destructive animal essentially on the planet. It's because of the fact that they pretty much drained most of the Earth's sea creatures out there. I mean, when you think about that, pause for a second and realize the ramifications of that. There are far, far more creatures on, or in this case in the sea, than there are on Earth. Far more, especially considering how large the sea is compared to the land masses here on Earth. So imagine all those billions of life forms, all of them, most of them have been withered out, just completely destroyed by these leeches. That denotes several things. These leeches seem to be, of course, carnivorous, but voraciously carnivorous. Like they're not just eating to feed. It's almost like a piranha type of aspect with them. That's another Earth animal that they're probably mostly based on by the way they attack. They all attack in a group in a frenzy. But yes, it seems to be like they're not just doing it for food. It's almost like they're doing it to just destroy, almost like out of territory, protection, mating purposes, whatever is the case, they're doing it and they're doing it well. And the other aspect is this: it seems like they're spawning themselves in a kind of exponential level. The fact that some of them were transported here to Zen, and then in a short time period, they're able to destroy, basically cause the extinction of most sea creatures, if not all of them, out there in the sea, then that shows just how powerful, how destructive these creatures are. It's almost like locusts run amok, like biblical locusts when it comes to their destruction. I mean, the fact that most parts of these games, whenever you hear some of the characters throughout them, like in Half-Life 2, describing apparently that there's no fish, there's nothing to see out there in terms of other sea life. All there are leeches, and you encounter them too in Half-Life 2. If you try to swim out as far as you can, you don't see anything else but these particular creatures out there that create that wall that I was mentioning earlier to prevent you from going any further, because they're essentially all attacking at once. But that's very doom and gloom when you think about it, because here you have all these beautiful sea creatures, all of them out there, all of them destroyed, just completely eaten by there. You could travel thousands of miles out there in the sea, and the only thing you will encounter are these leeches. Kind of glooming when you think about it. No, it's the fact that these things just utterly cause the destruction of most of planet Earth. And on top of that too, if you count the small bodies of water that are located on land, the fact that whenever you run into certain parts of that and some of the games, how you don't see any other normal things like fish or the life within those parts of the waters too, kind of makes you think that these things also destroyed those areas as well. And also think about this too, maybe they were teleported throughout various parts of Earth, but at the same time, just anything else like let's say strong winds, hurricane winds, or some other type of very, very strong force could cause these things to come across various parts of land in certain parts of water that normally wouldn't be reached by them, and then the cycle continues. They'll just continue to destroy everything that's out there. So as far as these creatures, simple creatures, just basically your average leech for all intents and purposes, causing small damage just at a time. But it's not about that. It's about the fact that they are in such multitude of numbers, probably, dare I say, like in the billions when it comes to their their total numbers considering the sea life, the waters that are out there, and you have the powerful force, the destruction of these creatures. In fact, the only other known creature that seems to occupy the waters there on Earth now within the universe of Half-Life seems to be the Ichthyosaur, those very nasty creatures that I've talked about in one of my other videos too. So, but that's pretty much it. Not much else in terms of talking about the leech, just because there's not much else to talk about. They're very easy to avoid. You can just practically swim around them as long as you swim fast enough. You will get attacked. I mean, you will get bitten here and there, but it's not something that'll be fatal. Or if you have your classic crowbar, you can try swinging, and a couple of swings will take care of things. The only problem is because of the numbers, you'll have an issue trying to get all of them all at once. You'll forget about shooting at them or forget about doing any other types of explosives. You're just wasting ammo at that point. So those parts of the games, they're just, again, pretty much there to make sure that you're not spending too much time in certain areas, or you're just blocked off completely. You're not able to go beyond these creatures. So, but what do you guys think? Anything else I might have missed with regards to this classic creature? Yet another one that has spawned itself, so to speak, within multiple games. So, if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, please let me know. I tried to see if I could find any concept art like I've done in some of my past videos, but unfortunately, no, nothing else in terms of these creatures, because really not much in terms of concept art to show. It's just a leech, like for all intents and purposes. So, all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.